You're listening to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Did you know that you could build a tax-free pool of wealth that's liquid and accessible all your life while building your retirement nest egg? Gain full control of your financial future and stop relying on the government and banks. The wealthy have already discovered this wealth-building secret. Now it's your turn to get financially secure without following the conventional wisdom that keeps you in debt to banks. Now here's your host, Valerie LaRocque.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the show's second episode. I'm glad you're here. I have a question for you to ponder today, and it is, have you ever thought about how much of your retirement account the government will take at your retirement? At that time, when you start needing that money to live off of as your income, have you thought about how much of that you actually get to keep? Okay, so you ponder that question, and I will get into today's topic. I want to tell you a story today about a typical American family. Although by the end of this story, you may find that this family is actually not so typical. So let's review their financial situation. They have income of $48,000 per year, expenses at $59,000 per year, and credit card debt at $310,000. Eesh, that's pretty high. So what kind of advice would you give this family? Yikes, they're really in some bad situation. Maybe bankruptcy? That kind of jumps to mind quick. How are you going to get out of this debt? You got to get rid of that $310,000. You're upside down. You keep increasing it. Who's going to keep giving you any more debt to even keep doing that? You need to get out of that debt, claim bankruptcy. But what if that wasn't an option for this family? How about cutting expenses? That seems like a no-brainer. They definitely have to cut expenses. How can you continue to spend $11,000 a year more than you make? But what would this do to the family? They have expenses. They have, mortgage and buy food. They have children and maybe diapers and gas and utilities, all the regular expenses. They want to save too. I mean, what would this do to this family? Obviously, they're not able to cut expenses. They haven't done it yet. They're struggling. How about increase income? Yes, that's some advice I would give. You are going to need to increase your income, whether that's a new job or whether that's getting a second job or a third job. You're definitely going to need to increase your income to be more than the expenses you are currently spending. Can you imagine? Would you let this family handle your money? No, definitely not. I'm sure everybody's shaking their head right now. No way. So let's review this situation one more time. The income for this family is $48,000 per year. Expenses are $59,000. And the credit card debt is at $310,000. It just sounds just crazy. Now let's just add a whole bunch of zeros and see what that looks like now. Income at $4.8 trillion, expenses at $5.9 trillion, and debt at $31 trillion. Now what family am I talking about? You guessed it, Uncle Sam. Now, if you want to see these numbers yourself, you can go to usdebtclock.org and watch those numbers as they increase rapidly in real time. Something fun to do. And this isn't even the whole story. We actually have unfunded liabilities of over $173 trillion, primarily due to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Now, of course, most people have heard of the amount of the deficit. They know about it. They're probably desensitized to it's just so big. They're desensitized to the size of it. So let's try to compare it to something that we can kind of wrap our minds around a little bit. Like, how long would it take to count to 1 trillion? Let's just focus on that. Well, it would take 31,963 years just to count to 1 trillion. So now multiply that by 31 and we have our number. Totally unfathomable just how large the number is. And we as a country, we are already 100% expenses over income. This massive debt has the liability of each U.S. citizen at over $519,000 per person. Wow. Can you imagine? Your children, you have a baby and bam, you owe $519,000. Welcome to the world. Maybe some of you have heard of this author I'm about to talk about. His name is David McKnight. He wrote the book Power of Zero, How to Get to a 0% Tax Bracket and Transform Your Retirement. Great book. I heard him speak in a presentation, or maybe it was in the Power of Zero documentary that he created, where he said in the next 75 years, Medicare alone will take up to 100% of the federal budget. And 40 years out from now, the interest on the national debt is on track to take up to 100% of our revenue. Yikes. And this was all stated before all the additional government spending that took place due to the pandemic and the Ukraine war. Clearly, our government is not good at decreasing expenses. So what is their other option again? In his book, David McKnight quotes David Walker. And David Walker was the Comptroller General of the United States from 1998 to 2009. Basically, he was the CPA for the USA. And he says, based on the current fiscal path, future tax rates will have to double, or our country could go bankrupt. Now, he spoke on a national radio show and asked the crowd, why? Why would our taxes have to double? It's a 4-letter word. And everybody tried to guess. And he said, math. And here's just one reason why. Social Security. Now, in 1935, when Social Security was created, there were 42 workers for every one worker on Social Security. And the life expectancy was age 62. By 2017, there were only 3 workers for every one on Social Security. And the life expectancy was 85. Now, when it started, they didn't even expect you to live long enough to really get your Social Security. It was just kind of, a safety net just in case, but they didn't expect you to have to take any of it. And now people are living way longer and actually receiving lots and lots of this Social Security money. So our country is not good at cutting expenses, though they are good at increasing them. And if they need income, where do they go for it? Us, you and me. So now let's think again about the question that I first mentioned. And that was, have you ever thought about how much of your retirement account the government will take at your retirement when you start pulling that money, or when you start needing to pull that money to live off of for your own retirement, your income? Now, I know when it comes to saving money in retirement accounts, it is exciting to get a tax break in the current year. I know everybody wants this tax break. When you contribute to these accounts, you get paid reduced taxes. It's just that what you're basically doing is saving up those taxes for a time in the future when your tax rate is unknown. And that's called tax rate risk. Sounds risky to me, that's for sure. Now, if we go back to the book that I was quoting earlier, Power of Zero, and look in the forward section, I'm just going to read it right out of the book because it's good. And this section was written by retirement expert Ed Slott, who is a well-known CPA. And he says, those who saved the most diligently will soon realize that a substantial chunk of those tax-deferred retirement savings are sitting ducks for a revenue-hungry Uncle Sam. In fact, as your 401k or IRA funds grow, so does the government's share, since it is a partner on your savings. But unlike a traditional business partner, Uncle Sam can increase his partnership percentage of your tax-deferred savings whenever he needs more money. And that day is coming soon. So the question now becomes, the real question is, where do you store your cash? And we will go into that on our next episode, where I will be going over 2 ways to build tax-free wealth. Until then, please reach out with any questions to Valerie at alphaomegawealth.com. Thank you for listening in. I hope you have a great week.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.